Does one ever really need a reason to make a swishy black cape? No. This is one I designed and test draped about a year and a half ago on an accidental eve of having a million better things to be doing, but just never got around to actually making. It's a little exploration into bringing various construction elements throughout history into a garment that fits into the 21st century, which is my jam. But it has admittedly been quite some time since I've looked at it, so step one, of course, of this process is to re-familiarize myself with this pattern and to test it all out in mock-up form. I kind of have no idea how I intended the sleeves on this to go. Hear me out. So I have this piece here, which is a very wide angled piece, which presumably is supposed to give some flair to the garment. So this back sleeve seam connects to the back seam of the back pleated panel, but I'm not quite sure where this connects. Because if I connect it to the front, then there's no sleeve hole. But if I don't connect it, then this just is sort of loose. This does get belted, so this will be held down to some extent. All that being said, I think first things first is to stitch a mock-up and just play around with some options and see what is the most logistical here. Okay, so this isn't the worst thing in the world. It needs a second sleeve, clearly. I definitely have to lower this armhole. You can just, yeah, this will be a lot easier to just emerge at will. And then the belt will come here. Okay, yeah, that's a lot better. The one thing that I'm tentatively cautious of is already the weight of this muslin, giant muslin sleeve piece, is weighing down the amount that I'm able to get in this peak here. That sort of changes the buckling capacity of this here. Ideally, I would like it to be straight. See, when I don't have my arms in the sleeve hole, then it looks like this is a giant sleeve. When I do, it's a cape. Oh, I love this. Okay, this is gonna work. Okay. Oh my god, I actually have to cut now. We do, by the way, have a pattern of this cape available over in the Clockwork Fairy Etsy store if you would like to give this project a try for yourself. I hesitate to call this a tutorial because at the very least you will get to learn what not to do in following along with my mistakes. Do you remember that Edwardian cape reproduction that I did absolutely ages and ages ago? I think it was like the second video I ever produced on this channel, so actually like don't go back and look it up. However, that I had initially patterned off of an extant Edwardian cape, so Michelle has translated that original pattern to a digitized, downloadable, graded pattern that we are also offering over in the shop, so if you would like to go check that out, go for it. So I'm just sitting here trying to work out a Soutache design for the back of this jacket. I've searched Pinterest for a lot of extant Victorian capes and coats, and I mean, they would put Soutache designing on anything really, but I've found so many really interesting options. I'm gonna do some experimenting. So I've been poking at this well into the wee hours of last night, and this is what I ended up with before I went to sleep. I'm still not 100% confident on it. I'm quite fond of this shape here. This is very 19th century. This is also a very 19th century shape. Something around here is not quite correct though. I'm not fond of this angle here that doesn't quite want to behave. I might actually back some of these shapes with some black velvet. I think this could be really cool to add to, especially the black wool, which will be a much lighter black tone. This will be a very deep black tone, so have shapes like this that are fully enclosed. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some photographs of this and I'm going to probably translate this to the pattern shape and then figure the rest of this out in pencil. Once I've poked around and settled on a rough design, I can translate this to paper for ease of making things a bit more symmetrical. The back yoke of this cape gets a lot of Edwardian-style Soutache decoration, so before I cut anything out, I'm first just working out what this is. The design isn't strictly based on extant Edwardian objects, but some of the knot shapes are inspired by common Edwardian motifs. With the Soutache design finalized, I can move on to the embroidery, which is probably going to be the most time-consuming part of this project. After thread marking my seam lines, since the chalk will probably wear off with all the handling that is about to happen, I'm backing the yoke piece with a layer of horsehair canvas for structure, since this wool felt can easily be molded out of shape during the handling process. Listen, I know this isn't a historical reconstruction project, and tracing wheels are very much a thing in this century of our Lord 21st, but I've never got around to actually obtaining one of those, so I'm going at this in the old-fashioned way by pinpricking the outlines into this pattern and using the chalk dust to pounce the design onto the fabric. And I did decide to back those larger shapes with some scraps of black velvet, so I'm just cutting out those shapes also according to the chalk pattern. These are stuck down with a bit of light water-soluble glue to hold them in place until the soutache can be stitched on. The pattern, by the way, if you are following along with that, does include this original soutache design, but the design process is also super fun if you would like to try inventing some shapes for yourself. 2 weeks of stitching later, it is time to cut out the main body of the cape. Herein is where you'll witness my first big mistake on this project. That is the also common fabric choice. While this heavyweight wool coating felt is brilliant for warm winter coats, it's maybe not the best idea for a cape requiring circa 5 yards of material, but we will get to see the consequences of this later. I'm also cutting out some canvas interlining for the front pieces to help the collar and lapels behave. I really only need the top part of this, so I'm not cutting the full front pieces, only down to around a few inches below the waistline. And once again, the rest of my pattern pieces are thread marked all along the chalk lines to preserve them for long-term handling, and so they can be seen from both sides of the material. Now to shape the lapels, which is done by molding them into a rolled back position and pad stitching the canvas into place. And before we move on to the next step, the roll line, center front, and sleeve opening edges of the front pieces are all stabilized with just a bit of linen stay tape. Which brings us to the sponsor of this video, me. Just kidding, it is technically SkillShare, but also kind of me, because I've just released a new class over on SkillShare, which is a level 2 of hand stitching and covers a bunch of common hand stitches that go beyond just the essential construction stitches that I covered in my first class. One of those stitches being this very pad stitch, as well as the herringbone stitch that'll come into play later. We go through a detailed step-by-step walkthrough of exactly how each stitch works, as well as offering some tips on where best to employ these stitches. For example, on lapels for the pad stitching, or for securely tacking back seam allowances for herringbone stitching, for example. SkillShare, if you don't already know, is a really fantastic online learning platform and community that offers thousands of classes in all manner of creative endeavor, not just in sewing. I am a regular visitor to their photography and videography departments in a continual effort to up my video making game here, but you might also be interested in exploring drawing or painting, or perhaps a lifestyle or productivity class to help your creative life thrive. The first 500 people to use my link in the description box below will get access to one of SkillShare's best offers, 30 days free and 40% off your first year of SkillShare membership. Go forth and learn some stuff if you wish.
So I thought it might be a fun idea to do a facing out of this. I have this leftover black silk velvet from the 1890s ball gown I did a couple of years ago. That way when this collar turns back, this will be in a beautiful black velvet. I also, because I'm going to be lining this cape in this silk taffeta, which is a beautiful fabric for adding stiffening to a material. Not that the heavy coating wool needs additional stiffening, but this will, I hope, give it a bit of structural integrity of its own, because this will provide some structure where the velvet won't. If I just interline down to here with the velvet, and then from here down will just be more taffeta. That might be fun. So I have made the executive decision to flatline the sleeve pieces. I'm not going to flatline the whole garment because I'm hoping that there will be loose lining bits that I can use to finish off seams. There are only like 5 pieces in this entire cape, so there aren't that many. I do want to flatline, and by flatline, for those of you who don't know, I mean tack the lining layer to the fabric layer and treat it as one piece of fabric, instead of making up the fabric layer and making up the lining layer and then stitching both together separately, but laying this lining layer on top of the fabric layer, stitching them together, and then seaming them as if they're one fabric piece. Because the lining isn't loose and free and sort of free to pull away from the fabric layer, the fabric layer takes on the structure of the lining, and because this is a taffeta, it does have a bit more structure. So hopefully with a bit of finagling, we can end up with structural integrity in the sleeves, plus all of my raw edges hidden.
With the linings all cut out and the sleeve pieces basted to their flat linings, we can begin putting the cape together. You can theoretically attach the yoke to the back pleated panel first and work with that as a singular back piece, and indeed you probably should, but what is the sense in doing things conventionally, I say, in an effort to mask my illogical decisions? Here I'm pinning the yoke shoulder edges to the shoulder edges on the front panels, as well as connecting the center back collar seams on the front pieces. Whilst I was at the machine, I also went ahead and seamed my velvet facing piece to the taffeta bottom half to form the complete front facings. Again, this isn't a wholly necessary step, I just didn't have enough velvet to go all the way down on both halves, so did part of it in the lining, as is actually super common practice in historical garments, so piecing is period, as we do indeed say. Once these are sewn up, I can stitch the collar down to the neck edge of the yoke piece. And now for the back piece. This gets a couple of wide box pleats at the back in the manner of an 18th century robe à la française. I'm pressing these into place first with a lot of water and steam so that they're really fixed into the wool, and then basting these pleats down so that they sit nice and neatly into place during the rest of the assembly process. Because of the thickness of this fabric, I've actually cut away a little square at the point of the yoke to avoid having to have that double fold of wool just at that center point, which would just add unnecessary bulk. I can then press the yoke seam allowance under and pin everything into place. Worry not, this line of stitching will be hidden by another row of soutache which I'll add later. Although I don't think I actually got any footage of this, considering this was one of the tasks I decided to do at like 3 AM. I'm pretty sure I just neglected to turn the camera on at a certain point, so I don't think there's actually footage of that, but trust me, there is another piece of soutache that goes to hide this top stitching row. It happens, trust me. Now that the front, back, and yoke pieces are all connected, we just need to add the sleeves. I've pleated up the shoulders of these and pinned them into place, and here's where things start to get thick.
There's no way this needle is going through here without consequences.
I think this calls for some safety. I think this is going through 5 layers of wool at the moment. Between the pleat and the fabric and the seam allowance. Pray for me. I need more than 1 row of stitching here. This is not going to be enough to hold this. Okay, 2 pleats. Okay. We're good. Well, that was 1 row of stitching on one side of the cape. I'm sweating. I'm not saying these 4 chonk seams took around 2 hours to stitch, but I'm also not saying that I wasn't at certain points manually inserting the needle as slowly as physically possible to avoid breakage, but I did emerge with 0 needles broken, somehow miraculously. So who is the real winner now? Certainly not my time. Oh my god, this is so heavy. It's fine. It's totally fine.
Heathcliff has made a discovery. I was theoretically planning to top stitch the velvet facing down to the wool layer because otherwise it just sort of bubbles like that. There's not really a nice crisp clean edge. However, by herringbone stitching the seam allowances down to the canvas layer, that actually helps to give the edge some really nice crispness. Oh my god, that looks so much better.
Herringbone stitch is like fortunately a really fast stitch, so if you're like, oh my gosh, this is such a like an extra effort, it takes like so much less time than you think.
This was a very good call.
At this point, I decided that I wanted to make up some sleeve padding to hopefully hold up the sleeves a little bit, which were being weighed down significantly by all of the wool. Some scrap tarlatan ruffles, a bit of batting, and some shoulder padding later. All of these get stitched into the shoulder to hopefully structure it a little bit more. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a quick break because I've just had some very exciting news come through. I don't think I've mentioned this at all on the channel, but 2 years ago, I started a little collaboration with this company called Beara, who do these really great, excellent quality leather satchels and little handbags. They have been my absolute favorite, like go-to dark academia little accessory that I just take absolutely everywhere. And we have done a little collaboration to design a satchel, and the final prototype has just come in. So I'm gonna go pop down to their studio to have a look at it. It's just gonna be so perfect to get to have the bag with the cape all in one. Oh my god, it's gonna be so good. I'm so excited. Let's go. One of the things that attracted me to the company initially was not only their taste for historical flair in the designs, but also that they do this manufacturing on such a small scale, working with a small family-run company in Bolivia to produce these bags. And they work with genuine leather artisans who will create products that are so durable and so well crafted. I am so proud to be able to work with a company like that.
Do you want to look at it?
Oh, this is so fun. Oh, I love it. The size of it's really good.
I think this is a good idea.
Yeah, I like that. It's quite handy.
Yeah. And then,
Yeah, okay, now it's locked.
yeah.
Good. Goes in a little pocket.
Yeah.
Very nice. Oh, I love this. When initially designing this bag, I wanted to keep 2 things in mind. One, the fellow history lover, along with, of course, balancing that with modern day, everyday practicalities. Handbags aren't really a thing that we see throughout most of history, so while we couldn't really do a direct reconstruction of a historical handbag because that wasn't really a thing, the next best thing was to take historical details and draw those into a satchel-like bag that might fit in with a historically inspired wardrobe. Of course, I looked nowhere else than to sort of 19th century neo-Gothic flavored architecture because I find the details on that so majestic and beautiful, and the Victorians, of course, loved it as well. And so these motifs and designs and details carry throughout so much of history. So for those of you who are in need of a little carrier bag for yourself and would like to go investigate this one, the link will be in the description below. I do recommend you go check it out if this is something that you feel like will enhance your wardrobe or enhance your daily life. I hope that is something that I will be able to bring to you. As handy as a handbag is, it is my belief that one should never resort to handbags solely at the expense of pockets. So let's add some pockets to this cape. So I ended up reworking the sleeve attachment in a more Victorian sense, slightly different from what I tried out in the mock-up where the front piece of the sleeve was attached to the front of the cape. Instead, the back of the sleeve piece is still connected to the back of the cape. However, the front edge of the sleeve is left loose from about the shoulder down. The front cape piece wraps around and attaches to the seam allowance of that back seam from about the high hip all the way downwards. That way there is room for the arm to come through, but we still get that cape/sleeve effect. And this also means that we can put a little secret pocket into that back seam. So I'm stitching one pocket piece to the cape front and one pocket piece to the corresponding location on the seam allowance on the other side. So that'll all be in place for when I seam those together. But first, I guess it is time to make a belt. So Heathcliff has brought a luggage measure. I don't speak kilograms though. I'm gonna say it's like 5 pounds.
I don't know what that is. I'm gonna say like 3.
There we go.
It's
2.26
kilograms.
Like,
lighter than
yeah.
I thought, but
Oh,
it's
okay.
still like 2 kilograms of wool.
Yeah, that's a lot of wool. Okay, good to know. That was important information.
Anyway, back to the cape. That front sleeve edge is raw now and will need finishing, so I'm just cross-stitching that seam allowance down so that I can fell the lining over top of that to hide all of that nonsense. And the inside gets finished off with the back lining piece and a small internal yoke piece, which will cover the raw side and neck seams. All of these, of course, get felled into place by hand. The hem gets turned under and felled in exactly the same manner. And finally, I'm just tacking a little frog closure so that the cape can close further above the belt. And now it is time to take this finished cape friend out for a nice autumnal walk. I'm very pleased with how this cape turned out from the back. I think the Soutache design came out really well. Adding the little velvet details was such a good idea. It just helps the design really stand out from the back. And I love the pleated back detail. I love that. And this is something that the Victorians were quite fond of as well. It also gives the cape a very wonderful swooshy effect because you have quite a bit of fabric in that back panel that can swoosh out as you so desire. Oh, and then there's the weight of this cape. You might be wondering how comfortable it is to wear 5 yards of wool. While it is a very warm garment, for sure, it is also a very heavy garment. So herein is where we get to see my fabric choice regrets coming into play significantly here. My attempt at shoulder padding the sleeves, while it's certainly better than it was, still doesn't have quite the full puffy Victorian effect that I was going for, but you know what? In future, I will remake this from a lighter weight fabric and we will achieve those puffy sleeves. The other thing, unfortunately, and some of you eagle-eyed friends might notice that on the original pattern there is a dart drawn onto that front cape piece, which I did not put into the actual sewing of the real cape. My logic behind that is that the fabric was just so thick that it would just add unnecessary bulk to the front of the cape, but I really regret not doing that. And rest assured, the dart does still remain in place on the pattern for those of you downloading this and hoping to make one for yourself. It will help to eliminate a lot of that excess material that you see on the front of this cape and that is causing a ton of wrinkling around the waist and upwards towards the lapel area. This has been a fantastic project. I'm very pleased to have this now in my wardrobe. And of course, thank you once again to SkillShare for very kindly sponsoring this video. Once again, if you would like to go take my second Stitching 102, if you will, do go forth and click the link in the description. I would love to see you over there. So for those of you going forth and making one for yourself, best of luck. Do please, if you are one to share things on the social media, tag me in these. I would love to see them. Or if you are off to go practice some other crafty endeavor, I do wish you the best of luck in that, and I shall see you back here anon with some more historical or historically inspired adventures.
On go.
People are so confused.
Oh Lord, she coming. Oh Lord. Get it, get it. No. Get it. Oh yeah. Stop.